Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be working on a HDC Homier Distributing Company mini drill press. This drill press has been in storage for probably 10 or so years, and well, you can kind of tell. It has some surface rust built up on it, on the casting, and I'd like to get this thing back up and running so somebody can use it. I have two drill presses over there, so I don't need this one, but nevertheless I don't want to waste something that could be utilized by somebody else. So we'll see what we can do to get this thing happy. Now, if I recall, I used this thing as a kid and it would run fine, but the moment you started drilling something, that's when issues would start coming to the forefront. So I know that it will turn on. I haven't tried it since, I guess, 10 years ago, whenever I was a kid. But it should turn on just fine. We'll see what we can do there. I imagine this thing is from the late 1990s to early 2000s, somewhere in there. I'm not that familiar with HDC as a brand. It has a striking resemblance to my Chicago Electric over here from Harbor Freight. My neighbor gave me this drill press a few years back for cutting some grass. She had two. This one was in a garage for like 5 years, sitting in a box. And honestly, it's been a pretty good drill press. I've replaced the start-stop capacitor in the back probably 3 times. I overworked it. So then I got that, and I put a 1 horsepower motor on the back, and that's a beast. But there's a striking resemblance to both of these, so they're probably cut from the same mold. I don't know. What I want to do here is grab my extra key. I keep an extra key up top here, and a couple of drill bits, just at random really, some scrap wood. Over here I've got another How Wrong Till It's Right video in the works right now, where we make a couple of raised planters. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. I should have some build plans for it as well. Let's get going here. There we go. And let's just double check here. It does turn on, sounds fine. A little slow on the uptake. It's not abnormal. It sounds like the belt is a little bit loose. Kind of, but not really. If I put some tension on there with my hands, it's moving the whole motor, so we'll probably retension that. But I know it definitely needs to be cleaned up. Let's see if we can't lower our plate some. Yeah. This chuck is tight. It needs maintenance. I should be able to spin this with one hand. I don't know if this is the right key or not, but it'll work. Yeah, there we go. There. Looks good to me. I'm not centered up though. Ooh. The spring mechanism right here is popping out and making a clicking noise whenever I go all the way down. Those might need adjusted, but that's going to get us where we want to be right now. So let's just see what happens here. All right, let's try something a little bit more labor intensive. There we go. Let's just see if we can't get a good drill out of this. There's that dull drill bit. Alright, so the drill bit is dull, but I've got too much mechanical sympathy to keep this going here. Let's see, this adjusts, it should just be like a push deal, like you push the motor in and push it out. Okay, so it's on a spring right there. But this is also not the right RPM for what we're doing. Okay, we'll walk it off, how about that? And then let's just go for like something moderate in the center here. So number 3, we want to be 3 down. So we'll just walk it on here. There we go. Is that right? I'm 1 too tall. We'll go down 1 more. That'll be closer. It does seem like the motor is kind of anemic though. Okay. There we go. That sounds like it's going to cut some metal now. Honestly, I don't have any complaints with the way the motor sounds or the way anything really sounds. It all seems pretty good. So I can't really remember why this thing was parked. For fun, I want to pull the cover off back here for the start-stop capacitor. Let's grab our drill here and just pull these 2 screws in the back off. Just see what we're working with here. It's a nice little capacitor. There's our ground screw there. Oh, I hate the way that was done. That's not factory. Okay. So I'm glad I pulled this off. Wow. What's going on here? Are you seeing this? That's like the tiniest little bead of solder. And these like non-heat shrink things going on. Wow, okay. If I pulled this hard enough, well, that one's okay. There's no way that's factory though. Okay. So my assumption here is that somebody has maybe replaced this capacitor before. It has a date on here. It looks like December of 2004, if you can see that. So I'm gonna guess that somebody replaced this capacitor at some point. And growing up, using it, if this was installed after 2004, I'd love if I could cross-reference the serial or something, but the serial number and manufacture date, you fill those in manually on the motor. There's no stamp on here. So I'd love to know if that was original or not and a factory deal. But that looks like factory sheathing right there. Or something. Maybe it's just something somebody cobbled together. So, first thing I want to do here is mark which wire goes where. So to do that, I'm just going to take some electrical tape and squish that down and do that on both corresponding wires. I'm not sure if it matters or not, but if I can keep everything same and how it was supposed to be, that's just better. So I want to go in and free the capacitor here. We're going to cut, I'd like these to both be like equal length. They kind of are. Let's see here. We'll do that right there. Then I'm going to slide off these guys right here. And our capacitors are somewhat disposable. So I have less issue with like cutting these off to a clean, equal spot. And just starting fresh with those. There's only so much you're really going to get out of these two wires right here. We don't need much, but now if these weren't somewhat fixed, I would not solder these. But they shouldn't move around that much, so soldering should be the way to go. On something like in a car, if you're soldering something, you really don't want to use solder in a car because they move around and solder has a tendency to get brittle and break. I'll take a little bit more out of this one. There we go. That's pretty good right there. So we're going to do one at a time here. I've got some heat shrink, one cover, and then one bit of heat shrink. Then I'm really not your soldering guy, but I like to take, I don't know if you can see it real well, but like center to center and twist both ends together. There we go. Check the other side. That's a pretty decent connection right there, honestly. And I don't have a lot of faith in this capacitor. That was hot. It is from 2004, which doesn't make it bad automatically, but it also doesn't make it good. We'll take and slide our heat shrink up here. There we go. I'm getting my electrical tape off now where we marked which one was which. We'll do the same thing to the other one. There we go. There we go. Now we'll take our OE covers and slide those over top. There we go. Looks like I melted that one just a little bit. Anyways, I'm gonna let the press run for about 5 minutes and I might do some more drilling with it. And I'm gonna monitor this capacitor and just see if it gets warm or if the motor gets overly hot. All right, so it's been going for about 10 minutes now. The motor it's warming up, but that's to be expected of continuous running. It's really not that bad though. So I'm gonna call that a confirmed fix. There we go. But yeah, I kind of feel like that was our whole problem. Or at least my whole problem growing up. Is some days it would work fine, other days it just wouldn't. But this thing really doesn't have a whole lot of time on it. But I don't know. This was it says made in China somewhere on this drill press, and I'm not a person that hates on Chinese products. However, in the early 2000s or late 90s, I'm gonna say 2004 because that's what the capacitor says. I think there is a difference in like what was made at this point 21 years ago from China versus today. This is still a very well-crafted machine, in all honesty. Besides being, you know, stored on a concrete floor, the motor still does run. It's very clean. I don't know if that's the original capacitor or not. I wasn't around then. But I have a hard time believing that connection was factory. And if it was, I mean, again, quality control was a different thing, you know, back then versus what it is right now. So it is what it is. Hopefully it's good. For the time being, just to test it out and make sure this thing actually is good to go, I might take my Craftsman over there and swap it out with this one. I don't know yet, but I don't want to give somebody a lemon. But I might do that and just run this one for a little while. I'll come back here in just a minute after I pick up some, and we're going to address this clicking right here. I think I want to go on and pull this thing apart here. There we go. All right, let's pull the base off here. I bet they're 14s, which this kit doesn't have. Not a 15, not a 13. So this is wrong, but the closest thing to a 14 is a 9/16. It feels like it would be a 14. But they're not incredibly tight, so we'll just do this. There we go. It's really not that bad. It just needs some help. So is this fixed to the base? Yeah, there's no Allen key. So this needs to come off from the top. But yeah, you know, stuff like this really doesn't have a shelf life or an expiration. The motors are easily changed, but it's wise to keep stuff like this up and running. Even if it was made in China and it's 20 years old. So I have anchored this shaft right here to the table with some screws, and we're going to do another tried and true method here of just some WD-40 or some sort of lubricant and sandpaper. In this case, I have 1500 grit laying around. I wouldn't use anything like 80 or 100, like maybe 500 is the minimum that I don't know if it's minimum or maximum. I wouldn't do a very coarse grit though. We're just trying to clean this up some, so I'm not going to do this whole thing with you, but just trying to keep some lube on it and clean it up here. Eventually it'll kind of work itself in. If it were like 1,000, 800 to 1,000, it'd be a little bit easier to just slide up and down, but it'll get there. Again, this is kind of the wrong grit, but it already feels better. This stuff right here, we're going to hit that with probably just water initially, and I'll take a orbital sander with whatever I've got, probably 120, just to clean this up and get a shiny edge. But I don't want to use, you know, oil on this because it's an orbital sander for wood. So we'll do that, maybe wire wheel it. This right here, I'm just going to work with this for a while. Alright, so before I get ahead of myself here, I want to go on and address this surface right here. This main shaft the table rides up and down on. My weapon of choice is actually something like a Pledge or any other like generic furniture polish. You know, the idea here is that it will leave a waxy finish, safe for pretty much all materials, but not a oily finish. So I will repeat this process 3 to 4 times and just get this real nice and clean and, you know, waxed up. So I've got everything pretty well cleaned up here from top to bottom. We've got everything back together. I still need to address the chuck situation as well as our belt situation. Notice it has been removed, but I did clean in here. Over here I keep AT205 reseal on tap for all my junkers. This stuff is great at resealing, well, not resealing, well, yeah, resealing, but also swelling up rubber. So I'm going to take a little bit here and put on the belt. It's got some fraying going on there, and we're going to trickle this down the sides here, and we'll put this in a lawnmower or something. We're going to let the bottom sit in that AT205 for 20 or so minutes and just keep rotating, you know, like that. I can't get over how well this thing cleaned up. It looks really good, but I want to try and get this chuck off. And if it's anything like my other one, this comes as a separate piece and you press it down with the lever. So I'm not sure exactly how you're supposed to remove it. You don't have a ton of clearance without taking this stuff apart, which I guess we can do. Tell you what, how difficult is that to do? Because that's our stop, you know. Does the arrow have a key? Okay, that's threaded right there. So let's see here what that is. Well, I don't have a ratchet over here, so let's just use the wrong tool. I took these off camera, but over here on the inside cover and right here, they still had the factory plastic on them. Kind of wild. So now, does this just push out some sort of a way, or if we can get that off, that would be a bit more room. Okay. We got that guy out. Okay, it's moving, and that is plastic. That's kind of goofy. There we go. Cool. So that gave us just a little bit more room here to work. And my theory here is it's just going to be easier to clean this thing up without being on the machine. So let's just see what happens here. Okay. It's pretty well on there. I'd love to set a stop up. I don't know if that's possible. Also, the spindle wants to spin because I ain't got no belt on there anyway to jam it, set up. Use something a little bit longer and get kind of aggressive with it. I don't know if it moved or not. Oh, I think I poked a hole in the top of it. That's interesting. Maybe I should be trying to punch right there. Probably just threw the balance off. I'm not sure if it really matters though. It's not exactly a precise machine. I think it's moving. Yeah, it's moving. Okay. Man, bummer about that though. It is what it is. Can I pry it, I wonder? Alright, so I thought about it here, and I think I've already gotten this thing to the point where I've damaged the chuck and it's not worth saving, which is honestly okay. They're not that expensive. There it went. Alright. Let's see here. I'd love to know what the run out is, but I don't have a dial indicator. Alright, let's check this guy out. Yeah, he took a whacking. He took a whacking. That's going in the scrap bin, unfortunately. That's okay. I was pretty sorry to begin with. I think this is called a Jacobson's chuck. And I guess if you're doing this at home, hopefully not, you know, just get aggressive with it, is all I can say. But we'll figure out what we need to replace that. I'm not a fan of that clicking that's been going on. and it could be okay, but like, yeah, so it just quit clicking. I wonder if this nut right here wasn't tight enough. Okay, I get it. So this spins, the whole thread spins as you go up and down. So as you put tension on here and the nut rotates, yeah. This is hokey, but I'm gonna get a washer and put right there. And I bet that will fix our problem. Here we are at the grease cabinet. I'm gonna get a dollop of grease on my finger over here. And I'm gonna grease this washer. I know this might be stupid, but that clicking is driving me absolutely insane. So we'll just get a little wheel bearing grease on here. So there's some looby doob. There we go. Now we can probably get that just a touch tighter and fix our pet peeve. Thing is though, I don't know if I have enough room for my lock washer anymore. Or lock nut, rather. Well, that's okay too. Maybe. So far, so good. Wants to get hung up a little bit right there. We can get this jam nut on here. We're gonna call that fine. Of course we can't. All right, so here's what we'll do. We'll just do it wrong. We'll put this one on the back side. All right, still moves very nice. Great. I don't hear no clicking. It has a little bit more resistance on it, but it's still, well, might have it a little bit too tight. I'll play with that some, but I think the washer is a good little addition. Because usually, I kind of like it if they hang and I can manually manipulate this anyways, so cool. I'm gonna put this stuff up here back, off camera, and we'll measure and figure out what kind of chuck we need. Let's measure and see what kind of chuck we need. So I'm gonna measure this first in fractions. So I'm seeing here, I don't know if you can see it, 77 over 128. So 77 over 128. It's probably got a closer fraction to it. That's okay. Well, that's inches. We'll measure it in millimeters. So we have 15.67 millimeters. And then I also want to go on and get the decimal point inches. So 0.605 inches. Move that out of the way. We're going to bottom out our calipers here. And honestly, I'll just convert this to millimeters or fraction if I need to. So, our length here It's going to be L equals 1.063. Okay, so that's done there. And let's get our belt put back on. All right, somewhere in the middle is fine. Then we'll grab something like a flathead here, put some real tension on it. Perfect. There we go. Oh hey, there's Mr. Henry. Scaredy cat. Alright, so we've got some 3000 grit here, and I'm not worried about this taking off any material, but we just want to polish this up some. We'll degrease it before we go back up here, but while we have the opportunity. It's beautiful. All right. So we'll come back here whenever we've got some new stuff for it, a new chuck, and we'll get it slammed back together and put this thing back in use. It looks pretty good. Other than where I dropped it. It wiped off. I kind of figured this would be greasy, which is why I just went on and put gloves on. It feels really nice. It's definitely larger than the one from the factory, which I'm not too surprised about. Looks like they're about the same size. It's tapered. Let's just get a little cleaning action going on in there with some brake clean. Just degrease everything. Alright, then we'll take and blow this out. Alright. I've got a block of wood here. It'll kind of hang out on its own for just a moment, I think. And see if we can't press it in place here. I think it just clicked. Pretty good. Got hung up there a few times. the motor is anemic. And let's try something substantial. Now for this, I want to move the belt down to as slow as we can get it. All right, that's as slow as she's gonna go. And it's a pretty big hole to start out with, but you know, we're gonna find out. Just about had it. I'm going a little bit too quick. All right. It makes holes in wood, aluminum, and mild steel. I'll call that a success. Kind of like this little thing, especially with this new chuck. It's kind of handy right there. So I think I will swap this out with my central machinery over here, and we'll just swap a reel, and I'll take my table off, and I'll just run that one for a little while, and I'll sell one of these at some point. Probably the HDC. This one has a little bit more power, and it has more gear options. I believe one more step per gear. So it does give me a little more range, but I don't want to sell a lemon. And if I like that keyless chuck, I'll probably swap this one out at some point too, even though this one works fine. But I've got a feeling that's gonna spoil me. Now for fun here, this one says it's a JT33. I think this was like a B something. I had it written down. I guess I didn't. Yeah, so this is a B16 that came off of that one. This one here is a JT33. So, interesting. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Stay tuned for the next one, and I'll talk to you guys later. Alright, so before I wrap it up here, I got some information on HDC as a brand, and there's really not a lot out there on the internet except for a couple of old forums and some Reddit comments and stuff like that. But apparently they were a competitor to Harbor Freight, I believe. And where Harbor Freight was making copies of copies for better brands, HDC was making copies of Harbor Freight, maybe even out of the same factory. But they were like a traveling tool type deal that would move around and set up kind of like the circus, if I understand it right. And what I'm guessing happened is that, since I know I used that thing as a kid, it probably came to my town at some point. My dad saw it, got it off the truck, and said, yep, that's for me. So, I don't know. I wonder what it originally would have retailed. But, again, it's kind of hard to find information about them. I don't think they're in business anymore. Apparently, they've been around, or were around from probably 40 or so years, if I'm reading it right. I saw some examples of nicer drill bits from the 1970s. Maybe it was the 80s. That were like Taiwanese or something like that. They weren't doing the whole China thing at that point. I put this chuck on here and it's throwing me off. But let's see here. But yeah, I'm just gonna use this thing for a little while. And that being said, I probably will, well, that being said, I probably will let this one go. Oh, is my table not gonna fit? I don't think my table's gonna fit on this one. Well, it should. Ah, I had it backwards. I don't think I did actually, but we're just gonna go with it. There we go. Hey, Bubba. But yeah, I'm just gonna run with this for a little while, see what I think about it. There goes my thing. And get rid of it or sell it or do something with it, I don't know. But nevertheless, we kept it out of the scrapyard in an end service for today. And that's what really matters to me. But yeah, let me know what you, let me know if you know anything about HDC as a brand. Also, I could only find like one other example of a DPMINI15 on the internet, and that was an offer-up listing. So, kind of funny. All right, we'll swap these out for a little while. See you guys in the next one.